t'adorer, ne puis vivre sans t'adorer. Je t'adore, brigand, j'ai honte à l'avouer. Je t'adore et ne puis vivre sans
That was Maggie Tate singing an excerpt from Offenbach's La Péricole, a role she loved to sing, and a sample recording of which she herself, without false modesty, chose as one of her desert island discs. You see, the Mélisande with whom Debussy found no fault was equally at home in more frivolous work. Her art encompassed music old and new, grave and gay, and whatever she sang, her attitude to it was wholly dedicated. Born in 1888 at Wolverhampton, Maggie was 10 when the family moved to London, and her father bought a hotel in the Adelphi Terrace. He was musical, and had even taken a piano lesson from Leschetizky. Maggie attended piano classes at the Royal College of Music, where Hubert Parry had decided she was too young to study singing. But Maggie, Scots on her father's side, Irish on her mother's, had determination. Here she tells how her career as a singer began.
I don't know how it came about, but I was taking part in a charity performance at the little church of Corpus Christi in Maiden Lane, just off the Strand. It was my very first public appearance, and I was just about 15 years old. I remember the priest making an announcement, and the strangest part of it, so it seems to me today, is that I was at the back of the church listening to him. Perhaps I was a surprise item. The announcement went something like this. The next number is not on the program. A very young person will sing Tosti's Goodbye for us. But I think that after hearing her, no apologies will be needed. Miss Maggie Tate. I remember moving towards the sacristy through people standing in the aisle. Then there's a blank. When I came to, I was back in the sacristy, and there, a young man walking up and down, excitedly murmuring, "Quite extraordinary, quite extraordinary." And then the priest saying, "They are calling for you, you must make a bow." Then, and only then, I became conscious of the applause. I was asked for an encore, and the young man played for me. His name was Walter Rubens. He was one of a very well-known musical family. Thus began an association of the greatest generosity and musical sympathy, for he and his musical friends insisted that I should study with Jean de Reszke and no one else. And so at 16, I entered the de Reszke school in Paris. After hearing me, Jean de Reszke said I would be singing leading roles in 2 years, and so it happened. But those were 2 years of incessant hard work. I lived only for singing, thought only of it, dreamt about it.
The voice was there, the determination and the application. It was never a big voice, as voices go in the opera house, but its timbre was unforgettable, cool and limpid, or vibrant and impassioned as required. How did it come about that this young girl, who at 16 had so impressed her London patrons that they had collected a purse of £1,000 to send her to study with de Reszke in Paris, could, 2 years later, be singing leading roles at the Opéra-Comique? What kind of a voice had she? Here she answers questions put by Mado Stewart.
How would you describe your voice? I'm described through my operatic career as a soprano lyrique. This is what it's called. I don't know whether they call it that in the English language, because you have the coloratura, which is at the top of the piano, and then you have the soprano lyrique. A table of the length, of the breadth of the tessitura is all based on Mozart. Mozart based all of his operas on 2 octaves and 2 notes. See? Now, you take the Queen of the Night. She goes from bottom D to top F. This is 2 octaves and 2 notes. If he goes down 1 note further in the scale, he takes it from the top. But it's always 2 octaves and 2 notes. And the whole of the world that I was brought up in is based on that. So I'm a soprano lyrique, really, according to that plan. Now, what else do you want to know about the voice?
Well, simply that your voice had a particular...
It's no good talking about that, sweetheart. This is something that you are born with. You cannot acquire it.
So it wasn't your de Reszke training?
No, the de Reszke training preserves it. He didn't take it away by his method. This is the great point of de Reszke, that he never took away any quality that you had. He gave a method only like an athlete to sustain you. Because, after all, you must have endurance in the operatic world, much more than in the concert world.
How did he train you, apart from that?
He never spoke very much. He gave you the exercises, and he could sing still when I first went to him. And he sang the exercise, and you had to do your best to copy him. But it was very easy for me to copy de Reszke. I had every facility, and in about 3 or 4 months, I could do the exercises perfectly. And I had high palate, the raising of the soft palate, it is called in the Italian school. But I don't want to talk about that, because anybody listening to this in the future will do it wrong.
Did you take any special precautions with your voice?
Yes, oh yes, rather. I never talked on the day that I sang. And I never went out the night before I sang into a restaurant, which is the most terrible thing for the voice. Because you would have to talk like that to be heard.
There was no nonsense about Maggie Tate, and we can be sure that even at the outset of her career, she was no fool. After that charity concert in 1903, her professional debut took place in Paris in March 1906, when she sang some of Zerlina's music for Rinaldo Hahn in one of his Mozart concerts at the Nouveau Théâtre. The rivalry of 2 ladies, the director of the Paris Opéra-Comique, Albert Carré's singer-wife Marguerite, and his former mistress, the singer Mary Garden, then helped Maggie Tate in a crucial moment of her career. Because Marguerite Carré was not yet ready to take over the role of Mélisande in Debussy's Péléas et Mélisande, which Mary Garden had created in 1903, the young Maggie Tate became the second Mélisande, the role she studied with the composer, the role which made her famous.
It was at the age of 18, very small and slight, I found myself on Debussy's doorstep with a score of Péléas under my arm. Well, I rang the bell and was shown into the salon. Debussy kept me waiting 15 minutes before he came in. He walked straight across the room to a little upright piano and sat down. Not once did he even so much as glance at me, but I had a good look at him. He seemed tall, thick, and heavy, and he slouched rather than walked. He had a black beard and a square head covered with black hair. It struck me he had almost an oriental look, though I was told that he was born in Marseille. All this I took in as he sat at the piano without even moving. There seemed to be hours of silence. At last he turned round. Vous êtes Mademoiselle Tate? Oui, monsieur. Silence. Vous êtes Mademoiselle Maggie Tate? Oui, monsieur. Silence. Mais êtes-vous Mademoiselle Maggie Tate de l'Opéra-Comique? Oui, monsieur. He didn't believe it. Une autre Anglaise? Mon Dieu. Mary Garden had been the first Mélisande, a Scotswoman. Now another. Ah, well. And so Mademoiselle Tate, Écossaise, became an instrument in his hand. He said to me, I will have Mélisande as I want her. I was only too ready to agree. As a teacher, he was pedantic, That's the only word. Really pedantic. He never wasted any words. In fact, in 9 months, he said hardly as many words to me. You may wonder what happened if he wanted to correct me. Well, he didn't, except in small details now and then. Once at a rehearsal of Pellairs, when the conductor pulled me up, he said, "Laissez faire, Mademoiselle Tate. Leave her alone." That may sound as if it was a remarkable tribute to me, but it was really a tribute to Mozart. For 2 years I'd been studying Mozart with de Reszke, so I simply sang Debussy as I would Mozart. You see, to sing Mozart in the true style, you must be, so to speak, pedantic. You must observe exact note values. This was ingrained in me. Perhaps Debussy had not heard his music sung like this before. It is not easy to describe the impact of Debussy's character on me. He was such a many-sided character. Can I just give you some impressions as they come into my mind? Well, he was volcanic, a volcano that smoldered. I once saw him go white with anger, then red with the sheer effort of control. There was a core of anger and bitterness in him. Altogether, my impression of him was of a man obsessed. But he showed another and more pleasant side of his nature when he was with his little daughter, Chouchou, as he called her. He mentioned me in a letter he wrote to his little daughter, Chouchou, from Russia. He said he'd heard a singer that night with a voice nearly as beautiful as Mademoiselle Tate, and that was indeed a lovely compliment.
Maggie Teyte replaced Mary Garden in the role of Mélisande in 1907. 5 years later, in March 1912, composer and singer had a joint success when Debussy accompanied his second Mélisande in a recital of his music in Paris. It included 2 song cycles, Le Promenoir des Deux Amants and the second set of Fête Galante. Nearly a quarter of a century later, in 1936, Maggie recorded those songs with Alfred Cortot.
Danger de peur que terre cuite rit au centre des boulangras. Présageons sans doute une suite mauvaise à ces instants sereins qui m'ont conduite et t'ont conduite, mélancolique pèlerin, jusqu'à ces heures dont la fuite tournoire au son des tambourins.
With another pianist, the famous accompanist Gerald Moore, Maggie Tate made more than 50 gramophone records. Here he speaks of her.
What a privilege it was to play Debussy songs with an artist who had studied those very songs with the composer. Maggie's singing always has poise, but the essential quality of it is the thrill it gives you. There was never a song she sang where, at some moment or other, she didn't set your spine tingling. Her singing is instinct with her own warm-hearted humanity. Tears are never very far below the surface of this highly sensitive and emotional artist. I shall never be able to sing this song, she declared when we were rehearsing one day. It upsets me too much. Well, you know, English artists are sometimes accused, but only by English people, of being too phlegmatic. This is Tommy Rot, because our singers here are as good and better than most. I quickly answer them by saying, what about Maggie Tate? And that soon silences them. In our musical history, the name of Maggie Tate is a most precious one.
A composer whose music had this kind of direct emotional appeal was Reynaldo Hahn, the great Mozartian who had made possible Maggie Tate's Paris debut. She was always devoted to his music.
Fate was kind to me in putting me in touch so early in my career with three such authorities on the interpretation of Mozart as Jean de Reszke, Reynaldo Hahn, and later Thomas Beecham. And of the three, I think that Reynaldo is the one who tends to be underrated. He was a man of enormous charm, whether as a composer, conductor, or singing and playing his own songs. His songs, indeed, are a treasure house in which I am always finding something fresh, for his choice of poems have always been right for his own medium of songwriting. I shall now take the liberty of singing for you the baritone aria, Ce n'était pas la même chose, from his light opera Ciboulette.
Bien des jeunes choses on va tout, de la saison n'a pas de rose. Moi, quand je revois mon printemps, je me dis devant ce beau temps, ce n'était pas la même chose. Non, ce n'était pas la même chose. Le soir, bien des couples pressés échangent des rêves en prose. Moi, quand je songe à mon passé, je me dis le cœur offensé, ce n'était pas la même chose. Non, ce n'était pas la même chose. Quand je vois de tristes amours tourments. Je me dis, j'aimais autrement. Ce n'était pas la même chose. Non, non, non. Ce n'était pas la même chose.
Maggie Tate's singing career was checkered. The Great War, marriage and other emotional upheavals, her own intransigence and sometimes unpredictable behaviour all played their part in impeding steady progress and continuity in her work. After the First World War, she branched out into other kinds of music.
There's another field of musical activity which I entered from time to time, though I never stayed there long: musical plays. It was soon after the 1914 war that I accepted an offer to play Lady Mary in André Messager's Monsieur Beaucaire, and later I appeared in another musical play called The Little Dutch Girl. Both these pieces came to an end after a few months because of strikes, which rather gave me the idea that fate didn't intend me to forsake opera for good.
In a later broadcast, Maggie Tate recalled the composer André Messager, who was also the first conductor of Debussy's Péléas.
When did you first meet Messager?
Here in London, when he came over to take over the rehearsals, because he conducted for us at the beginning. We opened in Birmingham, and we had a dress rehearsal on the Sunday morning. And after the second scene, he said, "But Miss Tate has nothing to sing. Mademoiselle Tate, will you come to my hotel this afternoon at 4 o'clock? I said, yes. I go to him. He has a new song called Philomel. And that was the first time that I saw the music of Philomel. 4 o'clock on the Sunday afternoon, the day before we opened. He was a charming man, Messager, and a very good musician, my dear.
Maggie Tate did have her setbacks, however. America first acclaimed her in 1911, and she sang there regularly until 1919. But when she returned there in 1937, in her 50th year, she found herself forgotten.
I think I should recall my attempt to stage a professional comeback in America in 1937, which was a complete flop and one of the most depressing experiences of my career. It's true that I hadn't sung there for about 20 years, and lots of my record fans thought I was dead. But as I went fruitlessly from agent to agent, sometimes telling them who I was and sometimes not, I realized how completely an artist can be forgotten. But the story has a happy ending, though I had to wait about 10 years for it. The records I made in 1937 and the following years worked for me in the United States all the way through the Second World War, and the strange result was that the singer, who had been of no interest to anyone at 50, was received with open arms when she finally returned after the war at the age of nearly 60.
During the Second World War, Maggie Tate busied herself with forms of war work, including trying to drive a 6-ton lorry. It was in 1942 that I successfully persuaded her that singing some Debussy might perhaps be a no less laudable contribution to the common cause. So she agreed to sing again some of the songs she had sung to the composer's accompaniment before the First World War, taking part in the wartime series of concerts of French music at the Wigmore Hall to moved and enraptured audiences. And then she sang for Ensa too, as she tells us in this interview.
You sang all sorts of popular songs.
Oh, yes, rather.
Which
I
one?
needed some money, and they opened the Victoria Palace
Yeah.
as a music hall. And they wanted a name, and I went. I had a very big contract. For those days, they gave me £600 for 1 week.
Goodness.
But I had to sing 24 performances. Now, there was the thing that challenged me, to do 24 performances in 1 week. I said, if my method can't stand up to that, the de Reszke method, I'll prove to the world that it will. I did 24 performances.
What did
I
you
was
sing?
the only one that did it.
What did you sing? What sort of things?
Grieg in English
Yes.
and ballads.
Who was on the bill with you?
Oh, I can't remember.
Jugglers?
Jugglers and performing dogs.
That
The
impair you.
performing dogs and myself were the only two turns that did 24 performances.
During this last war,
Yes, I was over the age limit. I couldn't go into the services. I was sent into a factory up in Finchley. I forget what it was. And then, of course, I had sinus trouble from the dirt and the dust and everything. Then I had to leave that. So I went back into Enza.
to whisper, love is near.
Maggie Tate was many-sided and lived a full life. Gay, vivacious, loyal and courageous, she even reconquered America at an age when most singers think of retiring. She was made a Chevalier of the Légion d'honneur and a Dame of the British Empire. That glorious post-war Indian summer of hers as a performer resolved into an all-too-short autumn as a teacher. The winter of her life was long and protracted. Here she looks back on her life in the radio series Frankly Speaking. Then follows a recital broadcast on the General Overseas Service of the BBC in 1950. It covers a wide range of music and fairly illustrates the eclecticism of the art of this unforgettable singer and remarkable woman.
Music has always played the first part in my
Food
life.
of love.
Do you
Always,
feel
yes.
that because of that, it's made it a little more difficult for you to love somebody in the ordinary human sense?
Yes.
Do you regret
Yes,
that?
Mr. Boyd. No,
No,
not
not
at this
at all.
age, no. Because it's been such a great love.
Have you ever regretted it?
I used to think about it. There came a moment in my life that I had to decide between love and companionship or music and solitude. And I remember today that I chose the solitude. The other could never have made up for what I would have lost in music.
No.
And do you perhaps now feel that perhaps you've given too much to art and not enough to life?
No, I regret nothing.
You would do it again?
Oh, yes, every moment.
Do you have any fears? Are you
No.
afraid of the future?
No, not at all. Why?
Are you
No.
afraid of death?
No, not at all.
Are you
In fact, I
religious?
prepare every day of my life now for death
In what way?
by being very occupied. I learn new things so that I'm never at a loss for something to do.
Are you religious?
Well, I suppose you could say that I'm religious. I don't go to church, but I am religious. When you're brought up in the Catholic faith, you can never forget it.
Are you quite satisfied
Oh, no, I'm not satisfied. No.
with yourself as a person, I mean?
Well, when I think about myself like that, as you ask me, Mr. Muller, I prefer to have my faults
What
than
are they?
other people's faults.
How would you describe your faults?
I'm rough, perhaps, and I'm a very plain-spoken person.
Impatient?
I'm impatient, yes.
What are the kind of things that try your patience in daily life?
Lack of intelligence in other people, lack of common sense in other people.
Do you live alone now?
Yes.
And are you ever lonely?
No.
Do you miss the crowds and the applause
No.
of success?
Do you have a lot of friends?
Yes.
Certainly.
Do you want to be remembered?
I do want to be, yes, I'm conceited enough to want to be remembered.
As a singer?
As anything.
Well, on that point of remembering, I can assure you that thousands of those who are listening will be hearing your voice as we've been talking and all the joy they've got out of that. Be sure, Maggie, you are remembered.
Marmorbilder stehen und sehen mich an. Was hat man dir, du armes Kind, getan? Souffrant les caresses du vent, quand il éclate, j'en murmure. L'air Wolverhampton.